In this video, we will show you how to replace your rear brake drum and shoes. Let's get started. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing you need to do is safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheels are off the ground. Once you've done that, continue on by removing all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Once you have the wheel out of the way, continue on with one of your lug nuts. We're going to start this on, just a couple threads. After that, we'll use a hammer. We want to use the hammer to break the drum free from the hub located behind it. When you do this, it's a good idea to hit along this area right here. Be extremely careful not to damage your lug studs. Once it's broken free, give it a little shake and start removing it. We'll get our lug nut off of here. The next thing we'll do before we continue is clean off the area that we're going to be working. You'll notice that typically there's a lot of brake dust here. Never use compressed air in this area because it will make the dust go into the air and you could potentially breathe it in. Something to mention is we will be replacing the shoes and the mounting hardware at the same time. If there are any parts that you will be reusing, make sure you give it a good inspection. Let's move along to removing our lower spring. To release tension from this area, I'll use a pry bar. I'm going to carefully rest it up against this area of the shoe and then come up behind the wheel bearing. At this point, I can carefully pry this away from its mounting point right here and pull it forward away from its mounting point. Now that I've done that, I've got plenty of slack from this area. Continue on with the tool that you can grip onto the spring. Remove it, give it a quick inspection, and set it aside. Now let's move along to removing one of our mounting pins. For this, you'll find that you have a mounting clip on the outside here. It's under spring pressure, holding tension on the pin itself. To remove this type of clip, I'll use some pliers, get underneath this area, and gently twist it up and around to release the pin. Press the pin through the shoe and pull it out through the backing plate. Now let's move along to separating the shoes from the wheel cylinder along the top. To do that, grab onto each of the shoes along the top. We'll carefully try separating it and pull the end out of the wheel cylinder. Now we can remove this pin as well. At this point, we can start removing the adjuster. Just roll this off. Remove your adjuster. We will be reusing this, so set it aside. After you've done that, you can continue on by removing the spring from the top of each of the shoes. Now we can start removing the emergency brake cable from the shoe. You'll notice, looking at the lever on the shoe, there's a hole where the cable can slide through. We'll just take this, pivot it, line it up with the cable itself, and slide it right on through. Now that we have everything off of the backing plate, it's time to do a little bit more cleaning. There are several areas that you want to pay attention to. Looking at the backing plate, you'll find that you have 6 raised areas, 3 on the rear and 3 towards the front of the backing plate. Also, down along the bottom, you'll find the area where your shoes are supposed to sit against. It's important to make sure all 8 of those areas are cleaned up. Once you have the backing plate cleaned up, you also want to clean up the mating surface of your hub. Next, let's just inspect that wheel cylinder. Make sure it moves freely and there's no fluid making its way out. Assuming that looks good, continue on with high temperature brake grease. We want to coat each of the areas of the backing plate that we cleaned down. Once you have all 6 of those areas lubricated, also lubricate the 2 mounting points across the bottom. Now we're at the point we can start putting on our emergency brake shoe. We're going to start by dealing with the emergency brake cable. Looking at the cable, you can see that there's a spring that makes its way all the way down to the bobble that's supposed to go through the rear brake shoe. You need to push the spring up the cable a little bit. The easiest way to do that is with some pliers and some cutters. We'll use the pliers to grab onto the bobble that's at the end here. Continue on with your cutters and carefully grab on in between the spring and the cable itself and gently start twisting it to bring it up a little bit. At that point, you can hold onto the cable without cutting it in any way and grab that shoe and install it. Now let's take one of our pins, we'll slide it through the backing plate and through the hole in the shoe. To install the clips, you want to come down at an angle like this. After that, you can just roll the locking clip up and lock it into position. Before we continue putting on the shoes, let's make sure that we clean the adjuster. Generally for that, you want to make sure that you unscrew it, clean the threads on the adjuster itself, and lubricate it. Once you have that lubricated, continue on to the far end. You'll notice generally you can grab this and slide it out quite a bit. Add a little bit of lubricant inside that area. We'll work it into place. Continue on. Now it's time to put on the upper spring. Have a look at the very end of the spring. You'll notice that you have a hook that protrudes out. You want to make sure that that hook is down along the bottom area of the spring. Once you have the spring set into place, it's time to put in the adjuster. When you put in the adjuster, it's important to make sure you have it in the proper positioning. You'll notice on one side it has a larger gap here, where the shoe and emergency brake lever is supposed to sit. On the forward side, it has a much skinnier gap, because only the shoe sits in there. You want to make sure you have it in this particular orientation, so when I turn it up, you can see that this larger tab is facing out towards me on both sides. Now we can continue on putting on our shoe. Let's do our lower spring. Start it into one shoe and stretch it over to the other. If you have a hard time stretching it over, you can always take that shoe and slide it towards the center again. Make sure the shoe is seated properly along the top and along the bottom. Before we put the drum on there, we need to talk about the adjuster. To adjust your shoes, you would use a screwdriver or small pry bar. Come right up against the little tabs right here, and you should be able to spin it one direction or the other to either adjust the shoes out or in as necessary. Now it's time to reinstall your rear wheel. Put it in position, start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. Now we can snug up the lug nuts, we'll get the wheel back safely on the ground and then torque each of them to 100 foot-pounds. With the wheel safely on the ground, let's torque these in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friends, we've got the rear brakes back together. At this point, you want to make sure you make your way over to the other side of the vehicle and do the exact same thing. Once you've done that, make sure you pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm. Make your way under the hood, double check your brake fluid for good measure. If it's a little low, top it off with .3. Once you've done that, take it for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.